everyone. I, Akhilesh Kumar Tiwari, welcome you all to the lecture 6 of SWAYAM online course on basic principles of energy management and energy audit. So, first of all, let us quickly revise the topics which we have already learned in the previous classes. So, till now you all have got the basic understanding of types of energy, which is primary and secondary energy, commercial and non-commercial energy, renewable and non-renewable energy. Also, we have discussed about the consumption of energy globally, the energy scenario including the sectors like coal, oil, natural gas, electrical energy, nuclear power, hydropower and sector wise consumption of energy in India. We have also discussed the data related to available reserves of primary commercial energies. Also, discussion on energy security and its importance in various areas with energy efficiency and energy conservation and how they are related to each other and the techniques through which the goal of energy conservation can be achieved. Now, coming to today's lecture, we will going to start a new topic which is the various forms of energy. So, particularly in this lecture, we are going to discuss about energy and its basic forms. So, let us start the lecture. So, basically we will start with the definition of energy. So, maybe you all are familiar with the energy, but I will like to explain the basic definition of energy. So, energy is the ability to do work and work is the transfer of energy from one form to another. If we talk about in practical terms, energy is what we use to manipulate the world around us, whether by exciting our muscles, by using electricity or by using mechanical devices such as automobiles. Energy comes in different forms, that is heat, which is basically thermal energy, light which is radiant energy, mechanical, electrical, chemical and nuclear energy. Now, the various forms of energy. So, basically there are two types of energy, which is one form is the stored energy form, which we have also called as potential energy, and another one is working energy, also known as kinetic energy. For example, the food we eat contains chemical energy and our body stores this energy until we release it when we work or play. Now, talking about the potential energy. So, potential energy is stored energy that is associated with an object's position or state. It can take various forms such as gravitational potential energy, which is related to the object's height, or elastic potential energy, having the example of compressed spring, and chemical potential energy, which is found in chemical bonds. Now, we will talk about the chemical energy. So, what is chemical energy? It is the energy stored in the bonds of atoms and molecules. Basically, biomass, petroleum, natural gas, propane and coal are examples of stored chemical energy. It is released or absorbed during chemical reactions such as combustion or photosynthesis. Next, we have nuclear energy. So, nuclear energy is the energy stored in the nucleus of an atom, the energy that holds the nucleus together. The nucleus of a uranium atom is an example of nuclear energy, and basically this nuclear energy is explained by the equation E is equal to mc square, where m is the mass and c is the speed of light, which is basically 3 into 10 to the power 8 meters per second. So, this is the nuclear energy. Now, we will talk about stored mechanical energy. So, what is stored mechanical energy? It is the energy which is stored in objects by the application of force. Now, the compressed springs and stretched rubber bands are examples of stored mechanical energy. And next we have gravitational energy. So, you all are familiar with the law of gravitation, which was given by Sir Isaac Newton. So, basically this gravitational energy is the energy of place or position. Water in a reservoir behind a hydropower dam is an example of gravitational energy. So, when the water is released to spin the turbines, it becomes motion energy. Now, we will talk about the kinetic energy or work energy. So, basically kinetic energy is energy in motion, the motion of waves, electrons, atoms, molecules and substances, and it exists in various forms. Basically this kinetic energy is explained by or demonstrated by the equation 1 by 2 m v square, where m is the mass and v is the velocity. So, energy, the kinetic energy is given by E is equal to 1 by 2 m v square. Now, we will talk about radiant energy. So, what is radiant energy? It is the energy which is in electromagnetic nature, means potential energy is electromagnetic energy that travels in transverse waves, means it travels in the form of waves. So, radiant energy includes visible light, X-rays, gamma rays and radio waves. Now, solar energy is an example of radiant energy, because the sun rays come to earth in the form of radiation or heat. So, the solar energy is also an example of radiant energy. Now, we will talk about thermal energy. So, thermal energy or heat energy is the internal energy in substances, the vibration and movement of atoms and molecules within substances. And the example of this thermal energy is the geothermal energy, which is the example of thermal energy. Now, we will talk about motion. So, what is motion? The movement of objects or substances from one place to another is called as motion. Wind and hydropower are examples of motion. Now, next is sound. So, sound is the movement of energy through substances in longitudinal basically compression or rarefaction waves. So, this is basically the travelling of sound waves in the form of energy from one place to another. Now, the next one is electrical energy. So, electrical energy is a form of energy that is associated with the movement of electrons through a conductor, typically in the form of an electric current, and also it is a fundamental and versatile form of energy that powers a wide range of devices, machines and systems in our modern world. So, basically without electricity or without electrical energy we cannot imagine our life, and one of the famous scientists named as Ohm's law had given the Ohm's law related to voltage, current and resistance. So, we will discuss that in the coming classes. Now, we will come upon the topic work, energy and power, how this work, energy and power are interrelated to each other. So, now we will define energy, which is the ability to do work. In this sense, examples of work include moving something, means if you are moving the object from one place to another, it can be called as a work done. By lifting something, means if you are lifting any weight or any object, that also can be counted as a work. Warming something means if you have any kind of room in which you have to provide a heating system, so that providing the heating the room is also considered as a work done, which is to warming something or cooling something. And the next one is lighting something. Lighting something means if you are providing electricity to any room for the lighting purpose, then it is also called as work done. The following are the examples of the transformation of different types of energy into heat and power. Also, it is difficult to imagine spending an entire day without using energy, means it is a day to day culture or a day to day siblings for us, means which we cannot be independent of energy. We are totally dependent of any kind of energies. So, we use energy to light our cities and homes, to power machinery, also in factories, cook our food, play music and operate our televisions. So, as there are more number of conversion stages, the overall efficiency of the energy decreases. For example, the oil is used to burn and to generate heat. Now, heat boils the water and water is turned into steam, and this steam pressure turns a turbine, that turbine turns an electric generator, generator produces electricity and electricity powers light bulbs and light bulbs give off light and heat. Means at the ultimate end our light which we are using, like example of incandescent bulb, it provides the light as well as heating effect also. Now, we will talk about the grades of energy. So, what are the grades of energy? So, first we will talk about high grade energy. So, electrical and chemical energy are high grade energy. So, why we are calling these sources as high grade energy? Because the energy is concentrated in a small space. Even a small amount of electrical and chemical energy can do a great amount of work. So, basically this is the explanation or demonstration of high grade energy, why we are calling this electrical and chemical energy as high grade energy. Also, the molecules or particles that store these forms of energy are highly ordered and compact and thus considered as high grade energy. This high grade energy, like electricity, is better used for high grade applications like melting of metals rather than simply heating of water. Means this electricity is also useful in the domestic sector and also it is useful for the industrial purpose. Now, come to the low grade energy. So, now what is low grade energy? It is particularly heat. So, heat can still be used to do work, example of a heater boiling water, but it rapidly dissipates. The molecules in which this kind of energy is stored, which is air and water molecules, are more randomly distributed than the molecules of carbon in a coal. The disordered state of the molecules and the dissipated energy are classified as low grade energy. So, this basically completes the energy part. Now, we will come towards the work. So, what is work? Work is defined as the transfer of energy that occurs when a force is applied to an object and that object is displaced, means it is moved as a result of the force acting upon it. So, basically work is typically measured in joules, which is the unit of energy, and mathematically the formula for calculating work is given by W is equal to F into D into cos theta, where W is the work done in joules, F is the magnitude of the force applied in newtons denoted by N, D is the displacement of the object in meters, and theta is the angle between the direction of the force and the direction of the displacement. And also it is measured in degrees or radians, and cos theta accounts for the angle's effect on the work done. Also, this is particularly for translational motion. If we talk about the rotational motion or rotating body, work done can be expressed in joules as W is equal to T into theta by power. So, what is power? Power is the rate of doing work or rate at which energy is utilized or converted, and the unit of power is watts, and 1 watt is 1 joule per second. So, basically energy in joules is demonstrated by W is equal to P into T, and 1 kilowatt hour is equal to 3600 kilojoule, which can be also expressed as 3.6 megajoule. So, with this let us take an example of a numerical which is given in the slide. So, basically this question says a machine requires a force of 150 Newton to move it. How much work is done if the machine is moved 10 meter, and what average power is utilized if the movement takes 20 seconds. So, in this particular problem you have to calculate the work done and also the average power utilized. So, earlier we have discussed the formula of work done, which is equal to work done is force into distance, means here there is no determination or option of any angle given. So, we will directly use force into distance. So, force here is mentioned as 150 Newton and the distance moved here is 10 meter. So, you have to simply multiply that force into distance, which will provide you the work done is equal to 1500 Newton meter or 1.5 kilojoule. Now, we have to calculate the power. Now, power is equal to work done by time taken. So, the value of work done is 1500 joule and the amount of time is given as 20 seconds. So, simply you have to divide 1500 by 20, which will give you 75 joules per second. So, basically it is 75 watt. So, next we will discuss basic quantities of thermal energy, in which first we will talk about temperature. So, temperature is a measure of the average kinetic energy of the particles, which includes atoms or molecules in a substance. In simpler terms, it reflects how hot or cold an object or environment is. Temperature is a fundamental physical property and is typically measured using various temperature scales, with the most commonly used one being Celsius and Fahrenheit. So, in everyday life and Kelvin in scientific context. Now, what are the scales of temperature? First is Celsius. The Celsius scale is widely used globally. Water freezes at 0 degree Celsius and boils at 100 degree Celsius at standard atmospheric pressure. Now, Fahrenheit. The Fahrenheit scale is primarily used in the United States. Water freezes at 32 degree Fahrenheit and boils at 212 degree Fahrenheit at standard atmospheric pressure. Now, Kelvin. The Kelvin scale is the absolute temperature scale used in scientific and international context. It starts from absolute 0, where particles have minimal kinetic energy and temperatures are measured relative to this point. The Kelvin scale is the same size as the Celsius scale, but starts from a different reference point, that is 0 degrees to which is 0 degrees is 273.15 Kelvin. So, now we will talk about the conversion factors from degree Celsius to Fahrenheit and from Fahrenheit to degree Celsius and also from degree Celsius to degree Kelvin. So, the first one is degree Celsius into Fahrenheit. So, when you have to convert degree Celsius into Fahrenheit, you have to use the formula degree Celsius into 1.8 plus 32, and opposite of it, if you have to convert Fahrenheit into degree, then you have to use degree Fahrenheit minus 32 divided by 1.8, and at last if you have to convert degree Celsius to degree Kelvin, then simply you have to add Celsius plus 273, which will be converted to Kelvin. Okay. So, now we will talk about pressure. So, pressure is defined as the force per unit area over which the force is distributed. Mathematically, it is expressed as P is equal to F by A, where P is the pressure in pascals, the unit of pressure is pascals, which is equivalent to 1 Newton per square meter. F is the force applied perpendicular to the area, and A is the surface area over which the force is distributed. Now, its related key points are units. So, pressure is typically measured in pascals in the international system of units, which is called as SI. Other common units include atmospheres denoted by ATM, millimeters of mercury, which is denoted as mmHg, and pounds per square inch, which is denoted as PSI, depending on the context. Now, the direction. Pressure acts in all direction at a point within a fluid, liquid or gas. This property is described by Pascal's principle, which states that a change in pressure applied to an enclosed fluid is transmitted undiminished throughout the fluid. Now, fluid pressure. In fluids, pressure increases with depth due to the weight of the fluid above. This concept is fundamental in hydrostatics and is responsible for phenomena such as water pressure in deep oceans. What are the applications of pressure? Pressure has various practical applications, including in engineering, example hydraulic system, meteorology, example atmospheric pressure, medicine, example blood pressure, and aviation, example cabin pressure in aircraft. Now, absolute pressure. Absolute pressure is the total pressure exerted by a fluid, including atmospheric pressure. It's measured relative to a perfect vacuum and is always positive. In contrast, gauge pressure is measured relative to atmospheric pressure and can be positive or negative. Absolute pressure is crucial in engineering, physics and many industrial applications. Now, what is gauge pressure? It is the pressure of a fluid, usually a gas or liquid, measured relative to the local atmospheric pressure. It can be positive or negative depending on whether it is above or below atmospheric pressure. Gauge pressure is commonly used in various applications, including tire pressure measurements and pressure gauge in industrial settings. Now, pressure and temperature, how they are related. So, basically in gases, pressure is related to temperature and volume by the ideal gas law, which says PV is equal to nRT, where P stands for pressure, V stands for volume, N is the number of moles of gas, R is the gas constant and T is the temperature in Kelvin. So, basically with this equation, for any kind of gas, the pressure and temperature are interrelated. Now, we will talk about pressure management. So, instruments like barometers, manometers and pressure gauges are used to measure pressure in various settings. Units of atmospheric pressure. What is the unit of atmospheric pressure? One standard atmosphere denoted by ATM is defined as 101.325 kilopascal, which is roughly the average pressure at sea level on earth. Pressure is a critical parameter in understanding the behavior of gases and fluids, and it plays a central role in the design and operation of countless devices and systems, from everyday tools to advanced technology in various industries. So, this is all about the pressure. Now, coming to heat. Heat is another term in thermal energy. So, heat is the energy that flows between two objects or systems when there is a difference in temperature between them. It flows from the warmer object to the cooler object until thermal equilibrium is reached when both objects have the same temperature. Basically, heat is measured in units of energy such as joule or calories. The International System of Units uses joules as the standard unit for heat. Now, how this heat is transferred from one body to another? So, heat can be transferred through three main mechanisms. What are these mechanisms? First one is conduction. So, what is conduction? Heat transfer within a material without the material itself moving. It occurs through direct molecular collisions. Means when you are going to when the two bodies or materials are in contact, this conduction takes place. Now, the convection, heat transfer in a fluid where hot fluid rises and cold fluid sinks, creating a circulation pattern. So, this is called as convection. Now, another one is radiation. So, heat transfer in the form of electromagnetic waves that do not require a medium. This is how the sun's heat reaches earth. So, the basic example of radiation is the solar energy or solar radiation. Now, what is specific heat? So, different materials require different amounts of heat energy to change their temperatures. Specific heat capacity is the measure of how much heat energy is required to raise the temperature of a given amount of substance by 1 degree Celsius or 1 Kelvin. Next is latent heat. Some substances absorb or release heat without changing temperature during phase transitions, example melting or boiling. This is known as latent heat. The latent heat of fusion is defined as the amount of heat energy in joules or calories required to change 1 unit of mass, example 1 gram or 1 kilogram of a substance from a solid state to a liquid state at its melting point, while keeping the temperature constant. Now, the latent heat of vaporization is defined as the amount of heat energy in joules or calories required to change 1 unit of mass of a substance from liquid state to gas state at its boiling point, while keeping the temperature constant. So, this is the latent heat of vaporization. Now, we will talk about sensible heat. So, what is sensible heat? It is a term used in thermodynamics to describe the heat energy that is added to or removed from a substance or system, resulting in a change in its temperature without a phase change, means there is no change in the state. In other words, sensible heat is the heat that you can sense or feel, because it causes a change in the substance temperature. Mathematically, you can calculate the amount of sensible heat denoted by Q added or removed using the formula. What is the formula? Q is equal to m into C into del T, where Q is the sensible heat in joules, m is the mass of the substance in kilograms, and C is the specific heat capacity of the substance in joules per kilogram per degree Celsius, represented by joule per kg per degree Celsius. And here del T is the change in temperature in degree Celsius, means the temperature difference T1 and T2 is denoted by del T here. Now, sensible heat is encountered in many practical applications such as heating and cooling systems in buildings, cooking and various industrial processes. Understanding and controlling sensible heat is essential for designing efficient heating and cooling systems and for managing temperature changes in various processes. Now, we will talk about condensation. So, condensation is the process by which a substance changes its physical state from gas or vapor to a liquid. This phase transition occurs when the temperature of a gas or vapor is lowered to the point where its particles lose enough kinetic energy to come together and form liquid droplets. Now, we will talk about superheat. Superheat occurs when a substance remains in the gaseous phase even though its temperature exceeds the temperature at which it would normally condense or boil at a given pressure. This implies that the substance has more thermal energy than is required to maintain it in the gas phase. Superheat is commonly used in refrigeration and air conditioning systems. In these systems, the refrigerant undergoes superheating in the evaporator coil to ensure that only vapor enters the compressor, which is crucial for the compressor's efficiency and longevity. Maintaining proper superheat levels is essential in refrigeration and air conditioning to ensure that the refrigerant can efficiently absorb heat from the surroundings and avoid the risk of liquid refrigerant entering the compressor, which can cause damage. Now, this superheat is used in various refrigerations and air conditioning systems we have already discussed. Now, we will talk about the TS diagram, which is also known as temperature entropy diagram or Mollier diagram, and it is a graphical representation commonly used in thermodynamics to visualize and analyze the thermodynamic properties of substances, particularly for steam and refrigerants. It provides a visual way to understand and study the behavior of a substance as it undergoes thermodynamic process. Also, the TS diagram is a valuable tool for engineers and scientists to analyze and design thermodynamic systems, particularly those involving the phase changes of substances like water or steam. It provides insights into energy transfer efficiency and the behavior of substances under different conditions. So, this is basically the basics of a TS diagram. So, in this class mainly we have discussed about the various forms of energy. The various forms of energy included the kinetic energy, potential energy, chemical energy, gravitational energy, motion, sound, nuclear energy, all these various forms of energy and how they are related to our day to day life. And also we have discussed some basic quantities related to thermal energy in the form of heat, sensible heat, latent heat of vaporization and etc. Also we have discussed superheat, what are the advantages of superheat, condensation and all the related topics. So, in the coming lectures we will learn about the basics of electrical energy and its related topics. So, what are the topics related to electrical energy? The voltage, current, power, how to calculate the power, how to calculate voltage, what is power factor, how the power factor depends upon the voltage and current, why it is very important for us, what are harmonics. So, all these things related to electrical energy will be discussed in the next lecture. So, with this we will end our today's lecture here. Thank you for your patience and we will meet in next lecture. Thank you very much.